Johnson was a 17-year-old boy that lived in Dallas, Texas. He loved to hang out with family and friends. His friends were Alvin, Jerry, Esther, Marem, and Daisy. One Friday night around 12 in the morning, they decided to go out to a party. Much alcohol and partying later, the party was over and everyone started to head back home, except for Medlab Johnson. Around 6 in the morning, Medlab Johnson was found dead at a horrible car crash scene. Days before the event, the friends were all excited and planning to go to this party. The party was everything they would talk about, says the mother of Medlab Johnson.
Medlab Johnson would always bring up this party everywhere, no matter the conversation. He would ask me, "Mom, can I go to the party every day?" assuring my approval. God, I miss him annoying me. I really didn't know my son's friends like he did, but I know that Daisy, that girl, was so secluded and nobody knew much about her. Nobody knew about her family, her interest, where she lives, or anything. I just knew that she dated all guys that had a name starting with the letter B. Marem was a nice girl. She was always the first one to respond to everything, no matter what. She also had really big eyes that suited her personality. Now Esther. She was an interesting girl. She was allergic to everything, you name it. Now Alvin was always crying. He was such a sad boy. God knows why he was always filled with tears and mucus. And finally, Jerry. Jerry was Medlab Johnson's long-lasting best friend. They were best friends since preschool.
At the crime scene, investigators weren't satisfied with the conclusion of Medlab Johnson's death being simply a fatal car crash. Although, later autopsy reports showed that there was alcohol in his system and may have caused him to crash.
It seemed like Medlab Johnson lost control of a car, drove off the road, and directly crashed into people.
The crime scene concluded of Medlab Johnson's car directly crashed in the middle with a tree. Just a fatal, horrific car crash.
I know my Medlab wouldn't drive under the influence of alcohol. He would never forget to wear his seatbelt. Something is wrong here. I know my son.
Can Medlab Johnson's mom have a point?
What we found is very interesting. This can completely rule out the car crash accident as a cause of death.
At the crime scene, they found a great quantity of evidence that could rule out the fatal car crash as the cause of death. They found a blue gum wrapper with 3 different fingerprints, blood that did not belong to Medlab Johnson on the seatbelt buckle, and some liquid on Medlab Johnson's shirt that seemed to have DNA.
How do you feel about Medlab Johnson?
I miss the dude. He was my long-lasting best friend. He was always there for me. He was a part of me, and now I feel like a part of me is missing, you know? I can't believe I'm one of the suspects.
Jerry was not suspicious nor guilty at all. In fact, he had an alibi, which was his brother picking him up from the party at 5 in the morning and arriving home at 6:15 a.m.
How do you feel about Medlab Johnson?
Medlab Johnson was a good friend, even though he always made fun of me for having so many allergies. I always made fun of him for having these weird allergies to green gum.
What happened there?
What had happened was, I was very drunk that night, and I fell so many times, scraping my whole body, which made me go to the hospital.
Next on the suspect list was Esther. Esther had some fresh scrapes and bruises in her face, arms, and legs, but she says she went to the hospital after getting them. However, when searching for her name in nearby hospitals, her name was nowhere to be found.
How do you feel about Medlab Johnson?
Well, me and Medlab Johnson weren't really friends. He always made fun of me for crying and secreting mucus everywhere.
When interrogating Alvin, all he did was cry. Every question they asked him, he would start crying. But what was suspicious about him was that Alvin and Medlabs Johnson's friendship wasn't so great.
How do you feel about Medlab Johnson?
Well, he was a great friend. I was always the first responder when it came to him. So when his mom texted me about the accident, I rushed on my way there.
But you live 45 minutes away and you arrived there within 15 minutes.
Oh, well, I didn't want to say anything, but you got me. The reason why I was the first one on there was because I was cheating on my boyfriend with the guy who hosted the party, so I was nearby.
Marem claimed that she was steady asleep around 6 in the morning, but was the first one to arrive to the crime scene. But with her confession of cheating on her boyfriend, the investigators scratched her off from the suspect list and proceeded to the next suspect.
How do you feel about Medlab Johnson?
Well, I don't know.
Any words?
I don't know.
Because nobody knew nothing about Daisy, and she seemed very suspicious and wasn't saying much. Investigators started to receive calls saying that she was guilty. They later scratched her off from the suspect list since her mom provided an alibi, which was that she arrived home at 3 a.m. and was sleeping all day.
Because we did not have any leads, we decided to take DNA from all suspects and run them for tests.
The autopsy report showed that Medlab Johnson did indeed have levels of alcohol in his system, as well as marijuana. For his external injuries, he had several burns in his lower backside. He had a fracture on the right distal radius and ulna, most likely heat-related. His traumatic injuries included of a left mandible fracture, left clavicle fracture, left humerus fracture, multiple rib fracture, multiple pelvic fractures, and a non-displaced spinal fracture at the level of T6, and brain hemorrhage. However, he also had a trace of turmeric, which is only found in green gum, and caused his tongue and throat to swell, preventing him from breathing. With forensic science on our side, Esther and Alvin were arrested for the murder of Medlab Johnson. It seems like after Medlab Johnson left the party around 5:45 a.m., he rode along with Alvin and Esther. Esther and Alvin saw the perfect opportunity to take on revenge and kill Medlab Johnson for making fun of them. So, Esther decided to give Medlab Johnson a green gum wrapped in a blue gum wrapper to keep him awake, when in reality was to kill him. When Medlab Johnson decided to chew the gum, his tongue and throat swelled up, stopping his airways and causing him to swerve off the road, and that's when Alvin and Esther decided to jump off the car to avoid the crash. After the crash, Alvin and Esther go to check on Medlab Johnson to clean up any evidence left behind, when in the contrary, left some behind. The blood that was in the seat belt buckle matched up with Esther's DNA, and the liquid in Medlab Johnson's shirt ended up being tears that came from Alvin.